step right there, and then Miss Pop will put you right there. That work?
Okay.
Up one more? Looks like some of that is.
Yeah, you want to go up one more and then.
Okay. Since we have to be reminded in a minute.
Yes. Okay, yes, that's right. Margaret, move a little forward. This is your first time? I still wouldn't mess with you.
I know, I am armed.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on the right.
Yeah, got it. Well, I want to thank President Ross and President Spellings for their work leading the commission on the governance of public universities in North Carolina, and for their dedication to keeping this system our crown jewel, a treasure that pays us back over and over again. I'm also grateful for the distinguished and bipartisan members who served: Lou Bissett, Nicole Dobbins, Isaiah Green, Ann Goodnight, Clifford Jones, Gary Locklear, Karen Pop, Chrissy Thigpen, John Townsend, Brad Wilson, Gladys Robinson, John Fraley, and John Bell. I appreciate their work on this. A few of them could come over after the meeting and are with us standing behind me. You know, 227 years ago, the first students arrived at the nation's first university to open its doors, our very own University of North Carolina. And though a lot has changed over the years, one thing has remained constant: North Carolina's visionary leadership in higher education has distinguished our state and made a real difference for our people. About 7 months ago, I established this commission to first preserve the undisputed excellence of our higher education system, second, to advise on how we adjust a university governance system to ensure diversity of political thought, race, geography, and gender, and ensure that this system can thrive for decades to come during partisan political storms, whichever way they may be blowing. The members of this commission have been leaders and champions for this system as students, alumni, trustees, members of the boards of governors, and elected officials who support and value the importance of a strong, healthy system. This commission includes 8 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and 1 unaffiliated, and men and women who've been a part of, in some way, of at least 11 of our public universities. Over the past 8 months, the commission has worked to assess the current appointment system of public higher education governance in North Carolina and created a report with recommendations on how it can be improved and strengthened. We have built the most amazing public university system in the country, yet it is obvious that erosion is occurring because of the makeup of the UNC Board of Governors and boards of trustees that has become more political and has begun exercising more direct control in the administration of our campuses. And although there are good people who care deeply about our universities now serving, it's clear that university leaders should reflect more of who we are as North Carolinians, and that the appointed leadership should be focused on broad strategy and vision. The commission includes, and I'm going to let them talk about this more, but it includes on a high level creating a new center of higher education governance, keeping the appointment of members of the UNC Board of Governors with the legislature, but having a minority party in the House and Senate appoint some of the members, having the legislature, the Board of Governors, and the governor appoint members of the boards of trustees at each campus, and enhancing transparency and accountability of board members. Now, it's important to note that these recommendations will help UNC continue to be the priceless gem and economic recruitment tool that it is, and that the current and future legislative leadership would not lose a single appointment here. And the recommendation adding the governor's appointments to the boards of trustees would not go into effect until January 2025, after I have left office. This is only about the future of our great university system, nothing else. I will say that about 180 years after the first students arrived on campus at Chapel Hill, I found my way there as a young man from Nash County, ready to have my mind challenged and my world changed forever. And as a double Tar Heel, I owe a debt of gratitude to the extraordinary university that set my life on the path of public service. I want to thank this university, and I also want to thank the commission members for their work on this critical issue. And now I'm going to turn it over to former UNC President Tom Ross, followed by former UNC President Margaret Spellings. Judge?
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and I want to begin, Governor, by thanking you for calling attention to the importance of how our universities drive the economy of our state and how important they are to the people of this state. They are our treasure for sure. And calling attention now as to how they are governed is important because of the times we're in, but because the governance of higher education is in question all over the country. And it's an appropriate time to try to figure out how we can do it even better than we have in the past. And I believe the appointment of a bipartisan commission, as you did, Governor, to suggest ways that we can enhance governance was not only timely but important for the future of our university. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. I want to thank also my commissioner colleagues, many of whom are here with us today. It has truly been a hard-working, dedicated, and thoughtful group of individuals that are committed to North Carolina's public universities. They've worked in a collaborative and civil manner to reach near consensus in our recommendations, which we're proud to share with you today. Now, we had a meeting earlier today, and in that meeting there was a lot of discussion primarily around the language that supports or clarifies our recommendations. And so we're not through with our report yet. We're going to continue to work on it to refine the language, but we have this morning adopted our recommendations, which we're most proud of, and we want to share those with you today. Before I do that, though, I want to particularly thank my co-chair, Margaret Spellings, who many of you know suffered a serious injury to her knee in the middle of all this. But I think it was maybe the day after surgery, or certainly soon thereafter, she was back on Zoom, driving ahead at full speed, and I deeply appreciate the honor to have worked with her. It has really been a pleasure. I admire her leadership and her desire to find common sense solutions. Speaking of which, I should also take a moment to congratulate her on becoming the new director, I guess is the title, of the Commission for Bipartisan Policy in Washington, the Center for Bipartisan Policy in Washington, D.C. So thank you, Margaret, and congratulations. Now let me talk for a minute about our recommendations. As I walk through them, I think it will become clear that we believe a key to good governance is having a Board of Governors and institutional boards of trustees that reflect the people of our great state. The North Carolina General Statutes were amended in 2001 and mandated that members of the Board of Governors, and I quote, are selected based on their ability to further the educational mission of the university through their knowledge and understanding of the educational needs and desires of all of our citizens, and their economic, geographic, political, racial, gender, and ethnic diversity, close quote. Our recommendations are focused in significant part on ensuring that the voices of all North Carolinians are reflected and represented on the governing boards of our universities. It is the law, and it is what is best for good governance. Now, regarding the Board of Governors, we recommend that the size of the Board of Governors be increased to 36. 32 of the members would be selected by the General Assembly, with 24 selected by the majority party, 12 in the House and 12 in the Senate, and 12 selected by the largest minority party, 4 in the House and 4 in the Senate. Of the 32 members that are selected by the legislature, we also recommend that 16 of the members be selected, 2 from each of the state's prosperity zones, which will ensure improved geographic diversity. In addition, the Commission recommends that the Board of Governors include as non-voting ex officio members, ex officio members, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and the President of the Community College System or their designees to enhance collaboration across the education continuum. Finally, the Commission recommends that the Board of Governors include, in addition to the current student representative, who under our recommendation would be allowed to vote on all matters other than the election of officers of the Board of Governors, 2 non-voting ex officio members, the Chair of the Faculty Assembly and the Chair of the Staff Assembly. Further, we recommend that in the future, the Board of Governors members serve a single 8-year term, which we believe gives members more time to lend their experience and expertise to the governing structure, but opens opportunities for more individuals to serve. We also feel that a single term will reduce the perception of political influence on board members. For institutional boards of trustees, we recommend increasing the size of each board, except for the School of Science and Mathematics, from the current 13 to 18 members. We recommend that the Board of Governors appoint 7 members to each Board of Trustees, the General Assembly 4, 2 from the House and 2 from the Senate, and the Governor 4 members, believing that a diversity of appointing authorities will enhance the governance of the trustee boards across the state. In addition to these 15 members, we recommend that the current student representative continue on each institutional board, along with the institution's faculty assembly chair and staff assembly chair, who would serve as non-voting ex officio members. The faculty and staff members. The student, we would leave that to the institution as to whether they would vote or not. We recommend that if the recommendation that the governor have appointments to each Board of Trustees is adopted, that the appointment not become effective until January of 2025, when the next administration is in place. Finally, we also recommend that future board members of boards of trustees serve single 8-year terms. For both the Board of Governors and Board of Trustees, we recommend that there be a 1-year cooling off period after a member of the General Assembly leaves the legislature, that registered lobbyists not be permitted to serve on these boards unless they also have a 1-year cooling off period once they are no longer registered. To enhance transparency and accountability, we recommend that every member of the Board of Governors and each member of the Board of Trustees be required to maintain an institutional email account and use that account for all correspondence related to their service. We also recommend that all committee meetings and full meetings of the governing boards be publicly noticed, held in locations that accommodate a reasonable number of members of the public, and that they be live streamed and recorded. In addition, we recommend that the appointment process for new members of the Board of Governors or any Board of Trustees or filling any vacancies should be transparent and publicly disclosed in advance of the selection process. The time of the disclosure, information regarding the demographic characteristics of the existing board, skills and qualifications of existing members of the boards would also be made public at that time. Finally, we recommend that the Board of Governors create a new Center for Higher Education Governance, which would be tasked with the responsibilities related to orientation, training, and continuing education of board members. Further, the center would maintain a database of prospective board members who have indicated an interest in serving on governing boards and who have received training related to the responsibilities of board members. The database would include skills, experience, qualifications, and demographic information. The center would be encouraged to reach out to those who are representative of the state's population to become trained and to indicate a willingness to serve so that their names can be in that database. The center would also have the responsibility to make recommendations to the Board of Governors and Boards of Trustees regarding ways to enhance and improve policies on ethics, conflicts of interest, as well as the division of responsibilities between the Board of Governors, Boards of Trustees, the Office of the President, and campus administrations. We recommend some additional responsibilities for the center, which are detailed in the final recommendations, which I won't take time to go through now. But we hope this center will become a thought leader for higher education governance in America. I believe these recommendations will enhance our current university governance and will increase public confidence in our university and its leaders. I also believe these recommendations will make it possible for more diversity of thought, ideas, and innovations to be considered by governing boards. Put simply, these recommendations, if adopted, will make our great university system even stronger and better. Governor, again, thank you for the opportunity to work on these important issues, and allow me now to turn the microphone over to my co-chair, Margaret Spellings.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. It has been a pleasure to work with you, and I appreciate your patience with me as I have been less able to be physically present than I would have liked. But it's great to be here today. Thanks also, Governor, to you for elevating these critical issues and putting us all to work. I, too, thank my fellow commissioners who've demonstrated their love and commitment for our public universities through their work in this process and their many years of service to the UNC system. The recommendations that Tom has described represent common sense, interlocking reforms that will help ensure that our universities and their governance fully represent those who attend, are served by, and who support through their tax dollars these critical institutions. We all believe that the UNC system has been a mighty engine for North Carolina's success. That will continue to be true, perhaps even more so, as our state's economic and social development are tied to the success of our institutions of higher learning. We have seen that governance of these critical public institutions is an important issue across our country, and a place where North Carolina can play a leadership role, especially with the creation of the Center on Higher Education Governance. We must have systems that the public understands, supports, and where they are welcome to participate, places where they see themselves. These recommendations will help do just that. It is important that Governor Cooper has embraced these recommendations, not because they benefit him, but because they can stand the test of time, however the political winds blow. We've also been rightfully respectful of the role and prerogatives of the General Assembly and the Board of Governors, and we thank them for their consideration of our work. I know we welcome the chance to answer questions you might have, and I yield the floor to Governor Cooper.
Any of us will be glad to answer questions from the media if you have some. Yes.
Why were these recommendations important now, and why would you want to change the name of the Board of Governors, which President Spellings, I believe it was the same under your administration, is that right?
Is this for President Spellings?
Well, it obviously was large when I arrived and got a little bit smaller. I think during that time we saw really a lack of diversity. You know, when you look at a board like NC State where there were no women represented, and, you know, the majority of the student population and the population of the state, I believe as well, is majority female, you know, it kind of makes you scratch your head and ask questions. So I think we're trying to elevate these issues, and the governance has been kind of in flux, obviously with the gubernatorial appointments eliminated a few years ago. So we think these make sense, and they're interlocking, as I said.
Just to follow up on the details and a broader question for the governor. These recommendations do not have any race or gender quotas, correct?
You should speak to that, Tom, probably.
Speak to that. Yeah, the state of North Carolina, you know, when we created the system in 1971, had quotas that were to address the diversity on the boards. And then a lawsuit was brought later in time that I think the legislature decided to resolve by creating an amendment to the statute. So in 2001 is when GS 116, this portion of that statute that I read, was passed. And so I think the intention of the state is to have you know, a board that is representative of the people, as I've said. And our recommendations attack that in several ways. You know, limiting service to 8 years, which now is 12, would give more opportunity for diversity. Increasing the size of the boards gives more opportunity for diversity. We hope that the Center on Higher Education will maintain a database that will include people who are representative of North Carolina in every way, whether it's geographic, political, gender, race, and that those people would have already been trained if they're in the database. We'll know what their qualifications and experience are, and so we would hope that appointing authorities would look to that database when they have openings to make appointments. So, you know, I think we had a long discussion about what else could we do, you know, and there are limitations on the law that I think allowed us to go the direction we've gone, which I believe over time will make a difference. I really do.
I think Gary wanted to follow up with me, and I wanted to follow up with that. No, there are no quotas in this recommendation. And secondly, I think it's important to diversify those who are making the appointments, because even if you provide diversity in your appointments, which we haven't seen, I've heard commitment to do better with women and minorities. You still aren't getting diversity of political thought, which is important to having different people do the appointing. But you had one more question.
Follow-up.
Yeah.
Follow Judge Ross's thought.
Yeah.
A news outlet.
Sounds like we're in the legislature or something.
A news outlet today suggested that you see this as some sort of grand bargain potentially with Republican legislators who are looking at other places to pull back on their appointment powers. Can you speak to that?
Well, this reporter brought that up and asked me that question: would this play a role in any of those discussions that are going on now? I would like these recommendations to be discussed in some way in the General Assembly. And if that is a way to do it, then certainly we are willing to talk about it. I mean, particularly with a number of those boards, one of the reasons that Republican leadership has given to changing the appointments of that board is needing more diversity of appointment authority, and they've said that time and time again. Well, here the legislature controls pretty much everything in higher education, so diversifying appointment authority here is a good idea. I don't know why it wouldn't be here if it is there. Yeah.
Michael, my question relates to Gary's question. We're supposed to be hearing from the Republicans soon on their plans to change the state board of elections. So I just want to clarify, are you actually open to doing that specifically? Do you have concerns about that, or is it okay if it comes in the context of some of these other changes?
Well, first, I think that anything we do needs to be within the bounds of the Constitution. But we are willing to talk about these boards and commissions. They've made recommendations about community colleges and about a number of other boards that are out there. We would certainly want to talk about that. As to the Board of Elections, that has been round and round the bend in court time and time again. I think the elections in North Carolina have been administered over the last couple of years extraordinarily well by a good group, and I don't see any need to change that.
You talked about, political influences on higher education. Some might say political overstepping. I think we've seen legislation this session that, would have rolled back tenure. I'm just wondering if you could talk about what you think the appropriate role of the legislature is in our public universities, and how these recommendations maybe get the systems more towards what you think.
Sure. I think an important role of the General Assembly is to make sure our universities are properly funded and that there is sufficient funding for salaries. And they also should appoint people as leaders in the Board of Governors and Boards of Trustees who have vision, who have the abilities to think strategically and can put forth a strategic plan for our universities. That's what I think the main role of the General Assembly is.
Two clarifying questions. One, if it's 32 appointees on the Board of Governors plus 2 faculty and staff chair plus DPI and community colleges, that's 36. Is it actually 37 with the student body president, or is the student body president appointed and is one of the 32?
The student body president, you're probably right, it is 37, but the student body president is currently a member of the board, so it kind of depends on what they do about that, right? I mean, the way we've proposed it, I think it would be 37.
Okay, and then on the center, I mean, that sounds like hundreds of thousands of dollars. How many employees do you expect that to have?
Well, I don't know that we've gotten into that kind of detail, but this is the kind of thing that I think could add real value to the Board of Governors and to boards of trustees, because it actually will help take some of the burden that's on them off, and also provide more consistency. So let's take orientation programs. I know from my own experience, I think Margaret would agree, it was an inconsistent approach to orientation and has been. So having somebody in charge of that can provide consistent orientation to all Board of Trustees and Board of Governors members would be helpful. Let's take continuing education. You know, there's a lot on the plate of our governing boards, a lot of different issues. And you could imagine the need for some continuing education around particularly important issues facing higher education. One jumps out at me is mental health. You know, what are we doing? What could we do for students that have mental health issues? You know, that takes some expertise to bring in the right people to do that. This center could help provide that kind of education for all of our campuses. I think maintaining the database, you know, will take some time and energy and probably some staff support. But again, our view is that whatever investment is made in it will enhance government and governance and will improve our governance structure. So I think there are other issues and other responsibilities that we've listed that I think are very important. Producing an annual report, for example, that details the membership of boards of trustees and board of governors and includes demographic information so that we keep in front of the public who's got a voice and whose voice might be lacking and so that we can improve. So I think there is a real need for it. I don't envision it as a, you know, huge bureaucratic monstrosity, but I do think it will be well worth the investment and actually help the Board of Governors and Boards of Trustees by saving them some time and energy, as well as the Office of the President and the Chancellors, who have a lot on their plate, trust me. At least I think they did.
So UNC Chapel Hill faculty have raised concerns about legislation creating a center on their campus. How would legislation to create a center for the UNC system be different than that? If they're concerned about shared governance and overreach of creating a center that's not coming from faculty and staff.
Well, I think there'd be a number of differences. This one would not be primarily a center that would offer classes and teaching and have curriculum and stuff that faculty should be involved in developing. But I also think this is primarily focused on governance issues that relate to the boards, not to to students directly. Now, obviously, it has, we hope, a long-term impact on students. But there'd be different kinds of things. And center may not be the right word. You know, we may need to come up with a different word to cover what we're trying to recommend. But I do think the concept of a place focused on higher education governance. First of all, it'll put North Carolina in a leadership role nationally, but I also believe that it can really both help current governance and current boards, but make a long-term difference and help make us more consistent in our governance structure over time. From, things change. We mentioned today in our meeting that, every time there's a change in the president or chancellor, a lot of things fall through the cracks, orientation programs, that sort of thing, that if you're not thinking about them, they may not happen. And that's where a place like this could be really helpful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good job, good, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. There you are.